What is up, guys? It's your friendly neighborhood webware fanatic, and today we're looking at all the basic upgrades in Marvel Champions. So let's go ahead and get started here with our first upgrade. It's a one-cost upgrade. Adrenaline Rush, Hero Action, discard Adrenaline Rush. Your hero gets +1 attack until the end of the phase. So this card, I think, is a little bit lackluster, right? It's just a one-cost upgrade, so you play it down, and you just wait. Whenever you want to trigger this effect, you can do it anytime in hero form as a hero action, and then you discard it, and you get +1 attack until the end of the phase. So I think that this card I'm gonna go ahead and put in the C tier, and I think it's a little bit of a situational card, right? Just because to get the full benefits of it, you really need to build up and set up a bunch of readies, right? If you're playing like a hero like Quicksilver or X23, a hero that can ready up a lot, this card can be invaluable because it does not. There's no limit, right? There's no restriction, so you can play 3 Adrenaline Rushes all down at the same time, and you can trigger all their effects, so you get +3 attack until the end of the phase. And then if you can ready up twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times in that turn, then that stacks up with the plus attack from the Adrenaline Rush, and you could do like potentially 15 more damage if you can ready up 5 times, right? So Adrenaline Rush can be very, very useful for a situation where you can ready up a lot to take advantage of that. But other than a situation like that, I think its effect is just a little bit too lackluster, so I'm going to put it here in the C tier. Next we have another one-cost upgrade, Booster Boots. Play only if your identity has a Guardian trait, max 1 per player, so we're going to evaluate this card as if we are playing a Guardian character. Hero Interrupt, so only in hero form. When you would take any amount of damage from an attack, exhaust the Booster Boots and discard the top card of your deck. Prevent 1 of that damage. So this is only going to be during hero form. I'm going to go ahead and put this card also in the C tier. And I think that Booster Boots and Adrenaline Rush, that's a huge gap between the two cards, right? Because Adrenaline Rush has a very, very high ceiling if you really build around it. I think Booster Boots doesn't really do all that much. It's just preventing 1 damage from an attack, and usually you don't want to be taking the attacks to the face anyways. So yeah, this will help you mitigate a little bit of it, but definitely not the best card in my opinion. Yeah, it's just a little bit lackluster, just doing 1 damage every single turn, and you have to discard top card of your deck, which will make you mill a lot faster if you're constantly triggering this effect every single turn. But if you are triggering the effect every single turn, you're probably taking a lot of damage anyways, which is not what you necessarily want to do. So because of that, it goes into C tier. Definitely helps. It's not going to be a D tier level card just because I can see someone using this card and preventing a lot of damage over the course of the game if it's constantly exhausting every single turn to prevent 1 damage per turn. Next we have another one-cost upgrade, Civic Duty. Hero action, discard Civic Duty. Your hero gets +1 thwart until the end of the phase. So I'm going to put this card in the C tier as well, behind Adrenaline Rush. So very, very similar, right? Except this one is +1 attack. Civic Duty is just +1 thwart. So the exact same thing, right? If you can get a bunch of readies, you can do a crazy thwart level turn. But I do think that the huge thwarting turns are a little bit less valuable than the huge burst damage turns, because those burst damage turns can help you end the scenario, right? The huge thwart turns can help you end certain scenarios, like the Collector 2, Escape the Museum, because that scenario you just want to thwart to win. But in most scenarios, you want to gun the villain down and defeat them. So yeah, I think because of that, I don't think Civic Duty is as good as Adrenaline Rush, but both very similar cards. Next we have another one-cost upgrade, Depth Focus, max 1 per player. Hero action, exhaust Depth Focus, reduce the resource cost of the next superpower card you play this turn by 1. So this is a pretty decent card. Assume that you're evaluating this card as if we're playing with a bunch of superpowers. It depends how many superpowers you have, right? I'm gonna put it in the B tier. I think so. Assuming that we're playing with a regular hero or a hero with like a higher curve of superpower cards, like a lot of the X-Men, the mutants have a lot of superpower cards. Depth Focus, I think, is an easy B tier card, where if I have an empty rush spot in the deck, I will not mind putting the Depth Focus in. If you really want to go all in with the Depth Focus, like building the entire deck with superpowers, you could argue that that deck might not be the most powerful because you have to restrict yourself to putting a bunch of superpowers in. But in that situation, the Depth Focus can be an A tier level card, right? If it works for like at least like, I don't know, 30 cards in the deck, then it's crazy good, right? But if you're playing a deck that does not have much superpowers, then this card can be a little bit lower, maybe in the C tier. So I'm just gonna put it here in the B tier. I think it just depends on how much superpowers that you're including, and if you are including a bunch, how often you get them in your hand to play, right? Because if they're all like superpower upgrades and supports, which aren't that many, but if it is like that, then the Depth Focus is not going to be as useful because you play those down already. But for superpower events, if you have a lot of those, this card can be very, very good. kind of just like a cheaper helicarrier, but restricted to superpowers. Next we have Downtime, a 1 cost upgrade. Play under any player's control, max 1 per player. Your alter ego gets +2 recovery. So I'm going to go ahead and put Downtime. I'm putting in a B tier as well. And do I like it more than Def Focus? I'm playing Superpower, Def Focus, or Downtime. Ah, man, it's close to me. They're such different cards, but they're very close. I'm actually going to put Downtime above Def Focus. And I think that might be a hot take. But I personally use Downtime a lot more than I use Def Focus. Yeah, Downtime I like a lot because if I have empty raw spot in the deck and I'm playing a hero that I know doesn't have much ways to recover, and especially if I have it ready, right? So I love Downtime with Iron Man specifically because Iron Man has his Arc Reactor. And this is only in hero action, right? So only a hero action, so you must use it in hero form. So after Iron Man, you know, he can throw or attack or whatever, and then he gets exhausted. You can use the Arc Reactor to ready up in hero form. You flip down to Alter Ego while you stay readied, and then you can use your basic recovery to exhaust, and then you get +2 for that recovery. And Iron Man gets so many hit points with all of his tech upgrades. So I love Downtime for a hero like Iron Man. I think for that, for a lot of heroes that need more recovery, Downtime can be great. It can even be great for Deadpool if you're building his hit points, like you're playing Endurance, which will increase his max hit points and stuff like that. Yeah, the extra recovery is always going to be useful for heroes that use their basic exhaust to recover. So I do like the Downtime a lot. And it's a very simple card, but I am a huge fan of it. Next we have Endurance. Speaking of Endurance, it's another 1 cost upgrade. Play under any player's control, max 1 per player. You get +3 hit points. So Endurance, a lot of people would say it's a pretty good staple, and I would agree. I think it's an A tier card. I'm not going to put it in an S tier because I don't think it's an auto include in every single deck, right? I think it depends. Even if you're not really building around it, still such a super high floor, right? It's just a 1 cost upgrade, you get +3 hit points. So it's almost like paying 1 cost to recover by 3, but it's a little bit better than recovering because you get to increase that max hit point threshold. And then in Marvel Champions, if you increase your max hit points, your current hit points also increase, right? So if you have 10 max hit points and then you only have 1 hit point left, and you play Endurance, your max is now 13, but your current hit points go up to 4. So it's a very nice way to get a recovery in hero form, because a lot of times you can only recover in Alter Ego with your base recovery, right? So if you're like if you're at really low hit points, like 1 hit point in hero form, you can just slap down Endurance, you get +3, so now you have 4 hit points. So it's just giving you a threshold to kind of survive in hero form. So that's at its worst case. As best case, I mean, it's just giving you straight up more hit points, and if you keep recovering, taking damage, and healing that back up, this card can't be viable. So I do like the Endurance a lot. I think it is a pretty good staple in a lot of decks. You just want to, there's just going to be specific situations where you don't run it, right? Like if you're already, you know, short on deck size, you don't have room for it, or if you're playing a deck where you don't want to increase your max hit points because you want to stay at your max hit points because of certain cards, right? So one deck that I don't like running the Endurance with is with my Deadpool pool deck because of the pool resource here, self-confidence. Double the number of resources this card generates if your identity has sustained less than 5 damage, and triple the resource instead if you have sustained no damage. So Deadpool, he can recover 1 time and go back to full hit points, but if I play an Endurance and increases max hit points by 3, 1 basic recovery will no longer bring it back to full hit points. So just for that reason, I like to have him be able to recover to make the self-confidence here a triple resource. And yeah, for specific type of situations like that, I can see that Endurance not being as useful. But yeah, and I definitely don't run Endurance in a Deadpool deck. But you could if you wanted to, right? If you run like Downtime and other cards to boost his recovery, there is a way to do it. I personally prefer to not run the Endurance there. So yeah, for that reason, I'm not going to put an S tier, but I think it can solidly go in most decks, just some situations where the Endurance is not going to be as useful. Next we have Enhanced Awareness. This is a 2 cost upgrade. Is this our first? Yeah, this is the first 2 cost upgrade that we're looking at for the basic cards. And it comes in with 3 mental counters. Hero resource, so you only use this resource in hero form. Exhaust, Enhance Awareness, and remove 1 mental counter from it, and then generate a mental resource. So this card is a little bit hard to rank. I'm gonna put it C or B, guys. It's a resource. You get 3 only. I'm putting a C tier, and I'm gonna put it right here. Oops, not right there, right here. I really think Booster Boost will probably be the last card that I have in the C tier here. So Enhanced Awareness, it's not a bad card. It can look bad, but it's nice to get this card down and have the extra resource for the next 3 turns. Unfortunately, there are just so many better versions of it in a lot of identity-specific kits, right? So if you're talking about, like, you know, Peter Parker Spider-Man, he has his web shooters, right? So, oh, there's no dash, I guess. So, yeah, I can't pull up the web shooter. Oh, there we go. Okay, so Peter Parker has this in his kit, right? So 1 cost upgrade comes in with 3 web counters, and then each one generates a wall resource. So the wall resource is way better than having a mental resource, and then they both have 3 counters, but this is 1 cost more, right? But obviously this is an identity-specific card, so not every hero is going to have this card. And then, like, for example, you have like Captain America with his Super Soldier Serum. I'm not sure if I hit that. Okay, so Captain America has this card, 2 cost upgrade, resource, exhaust, Super Soldier Serum, generate physical resource, right? So this card, you can use this unlimited times, it stays in play forever, right? So this is also 2 cost, you can use this forever. And then for this card, you use it 3 times and it's gone, right? So if your identity has those heroes identity specific cards that has a resource generator, then you may not find as much value out of this card, but it is useful to just get it down and have the extra resource for the upcoming turns. But that's only if you don't have anything that you want to play this turn, right? So there's definitely a use for this card, but I think especially as more cards come out, there's less and less value in them, but still not a bad card, and definitely there is a situation for them. And next we have the Enhanced Physique, 2 cost upgrade, and the Enhanced Reflexes in our 2 cost upgrade. So these are all the same versions of a different card, right? So these come with the physical counters, so exact same effect as the Enhanced Awareness right here, but instead of mental, it's going to be a physical resource. And for the Enhanced Reflexes, same exact thing, but for energy resource, right? So these cards are all the same. I'm just put them in the exact same tiering right here. And I'm going to put Spider-Man actually as the first one. Not because I think the energy resource is any better, but I mean, I like Spider-Man more than Vision. Okay, so, but yeah, I mean, they're all the same card. Okay, next we have 1 cost upgrade here, Espionage. Play only if you control a spy character, so we're going to evaluate this card as if we're playing with a spy character. Interrupt, when the surge keyword on an encounter card would be resolved, discard Espionage and then draw 2 cards. So this card, I mean, it's the definition of a situational card. I'll put this card right here. So it's definitely better against the more tough scenarios, right? Because the tough scenarios have a lot more surging. So each time a surge will happen, you can trigger this effect in Alter Ego or in hero form. You just gotta put it down while you have the spike, while you control a spy character, right? So when you play, it just stays on the field. Whenever surge comes up, you discard it and you can draw 2 cards, which is really, really good to get that 2 card draw. The only problem is that it does not cancel out any of the surging or any of the action encounter card. So instead to deal with the full effects of the encounter card hitting you. But you get a little bit of a bonus out of it just being able to draw 2 cards. So good card, but very situational because it has to be in the case that you're playing with, you know, a lot of surging. And yeah, you get the card draw, which is really, really good, but it still surges. The surges stuff still happens. So you still have to deal with that stuff. So not the best card in my opinion, but definitely there is a use for it. Next we have Honorary Avenger, 0 cost upgrade. And then, okay, so we're going to do all 3 here at the same time. So we have Honorary Avenger, Honorary Guardian, and Honorary X-Men. These are all 0 cost upgrades here. Play only if your identity has the Avenger trait for the Avenger one. Play only if your identity has the Guardian trait for the Guardian one, and then X-Men trait for the X-Men one. And then I think they all have the same effects, right? Attached to a friendly character, attached character gets +1 hit point and gains the Avenger's trait. Attached to a friendly character, max 1 per character. Attached character gets +1 hit point and gains the Guardian trait. Attached to a friendly character, max 1 per character. Attached character gets +1 hit point and gains the X-Men trait. So I'm not sure if they didn't errata this, but actually the Honorary Avenger is not capped for 1 per player or 1 per character, and the Honorary Guardian and Honorary X-Men are. So that's kind of cool. You can play multiple Honorary Avengers on 1 character and just stack up that +1 hit point. I'm not sure if that's intended or if they fixed that, but yeah, I actually never noticed that difference right there. Yeah, so anyways, these cards all have kind of the same effect depending on what hero that you're playing. So it's nice to get cards like this, right? So if we're talking about Honorary Avenger, right? A situation where I like this card is for something like, let's say, like Quinn Carrier, where it says play only if your identity has the Avenger's trait, right? If you're playing a hero like, let's say Spider-Man, right? Your basic Avenger here. So Spider-Man right here has the Avenger's trait. In his alter ego on the flip side of his card, he no longer has the Avenger trait, he has the Genius trait. Most of the time, if a character has the Avenger trait, it's only in hero form and they don't have that Avenger trait in their alter ego. So if you're playing a card like Quinn Carrier, where you only play this card down when your identity has the Avenger trait, you only play this card in your hero form. So if you're in your alter ego, you can trigger the effects of Quinn Carrier if you already have it down to generate this wild resource, but you can't play it from your hand if you don't have that Avenger's trait. So that's where Honor Avenger might come in useful, is if you attach it to a friendly character, the attached character gets that +1 hit point and gains the Avenger's trait, right? So this is a great way to give your identity not just +1 hit point, but you gain that trait in your alter ego as well, right? So Peter Parker would have the Avenger trait in Spider-Man form, in his hero form, and in his alter ego here. So you can do stuff like playing Quinn Carrier. And I also like this card a lot with Mighty Avengers right here. Right, so if each of your characters has the Avenger trait, each ally you control gets +1 Thor, +1 attack, right? So each of your characters must have the Avenger trait. So when you flip down to alter ego, not all your characters have the Avenger trait anymore. So then you lose a stat bonus for your allies. But if you play the Honor Avenger on your identity, then you have the Avenger trait in alter ego and in hero form, which gives you more versatility to do things in both forms of your character, right? So obviously this card is also very, very good for its straight up value of just attaching to an ally or a non-Avengers character. So you can play Avengers upgrades and stuff like that for that ally or for that character if you're playing like a multiplayer, right? So that's kind of the immediate effect of it. But yeah, I mean, there's another effect too, to give yourself that that trait, even if you already have that trait in your hero form, right? So all three of these cards I think work the exact same way. It just depends if you're playing a Guardian, X-Men, or Avengers. I like this card a lot. I think if there's an empty rush spot in the deck, at the same time, you have to. Okay, I'm gonna put this in C tier. I actually like this card a lot, but if I have an empty roster spot in my deck, I'm not just gonna put these honorary cards in because you have to build around it, right? There has to be a reason that you put it in. You need to have a card like Mighty Avengers or something that benefits where you want that trait on both sides, or you want some sort of upgrades that you give an ally. So there must be at least one other card in there to make this card good, right? If you just put this card in by itself, 0 cost for +1 hit point, that's not bad. I mean, obviously the endurance is much better. Yeah, I think you don't want this card just for hit points. The hit points is like cherry on top, right? So definitely not bad. But I think that if it's just for hit points, this card is not that good. If it is just for hit points, this card still stays in C tier. It just drops considerably down. I'm gonna put these three probably first in the C tier, and I might bump them up to last in the B tier. Because yeah, I mean, it's just the thing is, for my criteria, if I'm playing an Avenger or a Guardian or X-Men, if I have an empty roster spot in the deck, I'm not just gonna put the honorary cards in there unless I have something else specifically building around it. So for that reason, these cards go in the C tier, which is a more situational tier. But I may bump them up just because I think they are very good. Just 0 cost for 1 hit point at its floor. I think it's pretty good. But yeah, we'll put them here for now. Next we have Ingenuity. 2 cost upgrade. Play only if your identity has the Genius trait, max 1 per player. Resource, exhaust Ingenuity, and generate an a mental resource, I mean. So this card is very, very good. This card immediately goes in the A tier. And I'm going to put it behind Endurance. So just like what we were talking about before with the resource generators here, with the enhanced reflexes, right? 2 cost resource generator, but this comes in with 3 counters. For the Ingenuity, it's the same thing. 2 cost upgrade. You can exhaustively generate a mental resource, but it stays in place forever, right? So it doesn't have counters. It just, you can use this unlimited times as long as it's readied up. So very, very powerful card for basic, for basic characters. And if you're playing a Genius traded character, I think this is an A tier level card, right? You have to, I mean, you don't have to put it in. I don't think it's an auto include, but I think it's a very, very good card. The only thing that keeps it out of being an auto include is because you have to have the Genius trait. So a lot of times, let's just go back to Spider-Man when we're doing that evaluation. So for Spider-Man, for example, he has a Genius trait in his alter ego, but he does not have it in hero form. So if you're in hero form, you cannot play Ingenuity. You can trigger the effects of it in either form, it doesn't matter, but you can only play this card from your hand if you have that Genius trait. So you only play this card if you are in your alter ego here, because he has a Genius trait in alter ego. And I don't know why Spider-Man is no longer Genius whenever he puts on his mask, but I mean, I'm okay with that with the rules of the game. But yeah, I mean, so that's the only reason that's not like an S tier level card, is that it's a little bit restricted that way when you can put it down. But yeah, having that extra resource for all Genius characters, even if you don't have it in your identity specific kit, I think is very, very good. Resource generation is very good, and 2 cost is a very cheap price to pay for it. Next we have Plan B, a 1 cost upgrade. Play under any player's control, max 1 per player. Hero action, exhaust Plan B. Discard 1 random card from your hand. Do 2 damage to an enemy. So Plan B, I'm tempted to put in a B tier. I don't know if it's good enough to put in a B tier though. Okay, so the thing with Plan B is you have to discard a random card from your hand. I don't think that that is too restrictive at all, because usually when you use Plan B, you want to use it to where the random card is actually the last card in your hand, so you know exactly what the card is. It's a 1 cost upgrade, so you just put it down. It stays in play forever. You just have to discard a card to do 2 damage to enemy. This is not an attack activation, right? So this will bypass stuff like guard, it'll bypass retaliate. It's just a free 2 damage, pinging on wherever you want. So I think that's a very, very useful effect, very powerful. I guess if I have an empty rush spot in my deck, Plan B is never gonna hurt. There's probably other stuff that I would rather put in other than a Plan B. But I mean, at worst, I think it is a B tier card. And then if you can really build around, see with heroes that really desperately need, this really isn't building around it, but heroes that need that extra damage, that extra ping damage, and has a lot of economy, Plan B could be very, very good. It could be like an A tier level card for those type of heroes. But I think at its worst, it can still be useful just to have outright, just 1 resource, 2 damage, pinging off. You can do this every single turn, just exhaust Plan B. Not the most efficient way to do damage, but it's nice to just have out as an upgrade. So I think it's always going to be useful to be in play. Next we have our Plasma Pistol here, 2 cost upgrade, restricted. You can only have 2 restricted cards per player. Comes in with 3 charge counters. Hero action, exhaust Plasma Pistol and remove 1 charge counter from it. Then deal 1 damage to an enemy. So yeah, just your basic, tech upgrade here. You can exhaust it, take out a charge counter, and then do 1 damage. It's not an attack activation here, right? So this will bypass stuff like retaliate and guard. You can just ping off 1 damage to any enemy. This card is pretty decent as well. I'm gonna put it, I like it a little bit more than Plan B. I think if I have an empty rush spot in the deck, the Plasma Pistol can also go in as well, just pinging up damage there. Yeah, it definitely has, I think Plan B in Plasma Pistol has a lower ceiling than Adrenaline Rush for the big burst turns or these honorary cards here, because this can be vital for your strategy if your strategy revolves around it. But Plasma Pistol in Plan B has a much higher floor, right? You don't really need to build as much around these cards to get the full benefits of them, and they can always be useful if they're out in the field. Versus these cards right here, the Adrenaline Rush and the honorary cards, you really have to plan specifically for it. So just for that reason, and just because of the criteria that I kind of set, put these cards above it. But I can definitely see these 4 cards right here having way higher potential than these cards right here. Next we have the Scimitar, 2 cost upgrade, restricted. Here response attack. After you play another psionic card, exhaust the Scimitar and then do 2 damage to an enemy. So this is an attack. So it will not bypass stuff like guard, and you will take retaliate damage because this has that attack keyword. After you play another psionic card, so it's just every single time you play a psionic card, you can do 2 damage. It counts as an attack, and it's a response here. You can do it to any enemy, right? So this card is pretty good. I think you value this card if you're playing with a lot of psionic cards. I'm gonna put it, let's see, it's close to these cards here. 2 damage to an enemy. If you're playing with psionic cards, I think if I have an empty rush spot, I'm definitely putting this card in. So for sure a B tier card if you're playing a lot of psionic cards. And do I like it more than, I like it more than Plasma Pistol because it stays in forever. This only has the 3 charge counters. And I think Death Focus is still better though, to have that cost reduction. So yeah, I'm gonna put the Scimitar here in the B tier. I like the cost reduction for Death Focus more, and I like this damage more than the Plasma Pistol or Plan B. And we are evaluating this card as we're playing with a bunch of psionic cards. Next we have the Post Grenade. It's a 2 cost upgrade, hero action attack. Discard the Post Grenade, choose an enemy, discard the top 2 cards of the encounter deck, deal 1 damage to a chosen enemy for each boost icon discard this way. Oof, so this card I do not like that much. It is a weapon and it's an upgrade. So you just play this upgrade, you wait when you want to trigger, you can trigger it anytime you want during the player phase, right? Because it's a hero action attack, you gotta be in hero form. You discard it and discard the top 2 cards of the encounter deck and then do 1 damage. So since it is attack, it does not bypass retaliate or guard. I'm really tempted to put in D tier. But is it a C tier card? Is there a situation where this card can be good? Discard top 2 cards in the encounter deck. If you're looking at the encounter deck, right? Let's say you're looking through it with, global logistics, right? Or blindfold. Let me just pull up blindfold. So you play something like blindfold. when she enters play, look at the top 5 cards in the encounter deck, right? So you can look at those cards and then you know what's coming up. And then if you manipulate in some type of way, right? Blindfold can't manipulate the encounter deck, but other cards can. If you can do something to where it's a really high boost, let's say max. I mean, I know that there's 4 boost icons. It's a max in the game, but let's just say like you get 2 3s, right? I think that's a lot more common. I don't think that's super common, but I think that's going to be easier than getting 2 4s. I think it's almost impossible to get 2 4s. But if you get 2 3s, it's 6 damage, right? You're doing 6 damage for 2 costs to play this card. It's nice because you can just play this card and just wait, or you can do it right away. But the fact that you have to check it, oh man, is that ever going to be useful? I don't know. Okay, right now I'm going to put this card in D tier. I don't think this card sees any play. But if I'm missing something, definitely let me know. I really want to put this card as a D tier. I don't think it's that good at all. I think it's super situational, and if you discard 2 cards and get like no boost icons, it does nothing, and you pay 2 costs for it. Yeah, not my favorite card. It can get rid of a stun, which might be the best effect of it because it's an attack, right? So if you discard this card, then you can remove your stun. But yeah, not my favorite card in the game. I'm gonna think this one over a little bit. It may go into C tier, but right now I really want to put it in D tier. Okay, so next card is Ready to Rumble. It's a 1-cost upgrade. Play under any player's control, max 1 per player. Hero response: after you change form, discard this card and ready up your hero. So this card is very, very good for form changing heroes, right? So you're playing like Wasp or Ant-Man. They have their tiny form here, and you can change and open up the card to your giant form right here, right? So you can change from one hero form to other, and then whenever you do that, you can get a ready here with the Ready to Rumble. This is an upgrade, so you just play it down, and you just wait whenever you want to trigger this response, right? It's not a force response, but it must be whenever you change to a hero form, right? So if you are in one hero form like the giant form, you change to other hero form like tiny, then you can trigger it. If you're in your alter ego here, and you change to one of your hero forms, then you can trigger it. But if you're going from hero form to alter ego form, you're no longer in hero form for this response, and you cannot trigger the Ready to Rumble. So that's kind of the restriction on it. So this card's only good if you're going to be flipping, and particularly flipping from alter ego to hero form for most heroes. And for Wasp and Ant-Man, I think this card's a lot better because you can flip from one hero form to other. But yeah, 1 cost for a ready is pretty cheap, but it just has a little bit of a condition there. I'm going to put this card, I think it's a C tier card. Or is it B tier? Does this card... I'm evaluating this card as if we might flip forms. I think the potential is immense, right? It's like an A tier level effect if you can trigger it often, and if the restriction is not that limiting. But the restriction is a little bit limiting because you gotta flip down. I think B tier is a good spot for it. I think, yeah, I'll put this card a little bit up in the B tier. I mean, we're not evaluating this card for only 2 heroes, right? We're not just saying only if you play Wasp or Ant-Man or Angel to evaluate this card, but I do want to evaluate kind of as a whole. So do you have to deck? No, actually, okay, I'm going to put this card, I'm going to put it first in the C tier because I think that if I have an empty roster spot in a deck, even a deck where I know I'm going to change forms a lot, right? Like I like to change forms a lot in my Peter Parker Spider-Man Justice deck. This card, even if I had an empty roster spot in the deck, I'm not going to put it in. It really depends on me wanting to get readies, right? Because I'm using my hero's basic activation, or using something where I have to exhaust, or I'm playing around it, or I'm building around it, right? I think it has a very, very powerful effect, right? I think it's a very high ceiling. It's like an A tier level effect to get that cheap ready. But I think that it's a little bit more situational and restrictive than I would like, so I'm put it first here in the C tier. Next we have Resourceful, 1 cost upgrade. Discard Resourceful and then generate a wild resource. So the thing with this card, it's 1 card and you need 1 resource to put it down, so it's 2 effective resources, and you're getting 1 back for a future turn. Right? You play the upgrade and you just wait when you want to get it back. Wild is nice, but the card itself is a wild resource as well, which is nice as well. Not my favorite card. I think this card is pretty bad, and I think it might be, I don't think it's booster boost bad. I'm going to put it right here, and I think that there is a situation where this card can be good, right? Like if you have a bunch of extra resources and nothing to play, that you could put this card down for a future turn where you can do something really good with it. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's very, very hard to justify this card. I think as the card pool expands, this card gets worse and worse. but there are very, very slim situations. You know what? Because of that, I think it's, yeah, I was wrong about that. I think it's worse than a booster boots. And I want to put this card in the D tier here as well. But I just think that there are very, very few situations where it's nice to get this card down. There's no limit, right? So you can have 3 copies of a resourceful out in the field and just get ready for a bunch of resources for a future turn. I think that the upgrades, waiting for the upgrades for the time to use them, right? Like the enhanced reflexes, adrenaline rush, Red's rumble, a lot of these basic upgrades, you just want to save them and wait for the time to trigger them, and then you'll have a good effect whenever you do that, right? The post grenade is also one of the ones where you just wait, but I think this effect is a lot worse than other ones. But yeah, I mean, I think it can be useful, so I'm gonna put it last in the C tier for that card. Next we have Sharpshooter. 2 cost upgrade, max 1 per player. Hero interrupt. When you make a ranged attack, discard the top card of your deck. This attack deals 1 additional damage for each resource icon discarded this way. So I'm going to evaluate this card as you're playing with a character that has easy access to range, right? Because if you're not playing a ranged character, I mean, this card is going to be useless. Okay, I'm going to put it in the B tier. And hear me out. Okay, so I think for Domino, it's an A tier card, right? If you're playing Domino, because discarding a card off the top of your deck has so much synergy with Domino's cards, right? If you're playing this with Domino, I mean, maybe even S tier, right? Definitely A or S tier, right? Sharpshooter is so good with Domino. But for all the other heroes that have ranged, it's not that useful to do 1 extra damage for the resource icon. It's just going to be 1 extra damage, and you need to use a range attack, and you're losing the top card of your deck, right? So there's a lot of things, right? You may not want to keep milling your deck. You may lose cards that you think are good, right? I definitely don't want to lose a double resource unless I'm like Domino to get the extra effect of the Sharpshooter, right? Because if I'm losing a double resource, I get 2 more damage off the attack, but then I want that double to play something else. And then, yeah, so, but yeah, I mean, Domino is even better because Domino, let's see, I'll pull her up. So when counting resource on cards discarded from top of their deck, each printed wild resource, printed wild icon, I mean, counts twice, right? So if Sharpshooter discards a wild icon on that resource, right? So if it discards something like, let's say the resourceful here, which has this wild right here, then it's going to count twice. So it's going to do 2 extra damage, right? So Domino has so many reasons to run Sharpshooter, why it's A tier or S tier for her. For every other hero that has range, I don't think it's as good. It could definitely be a card you put in if you have an empty Rosh spot in your deck. But even then, I think I'll put this card actually last in a B tier. I think if I have the empty Rosh spot, I'll put it in, right? If I have nothing else better to play. But even then, I want to like build around a little bit with like cards that I want to mill or something like that to really maximize the full benefits of Sharpshooter. So yeah, this card's hard to rank. Domino. For Domino, it's A tier, S tier. For other range tiers, I don't think it's going to be as good, so I'm going to just put it here in the B tier. Next, we have the Side Holster, 0 cost upgrade, play under any player's control, max 1 per player. You can control 1 additional weapon upgrade that has the restricted keyword, right? So a lot of these restricted weapon upgrades here, where is the Scimitar? Okay, so for example, if we look at the Scimitar, it's a 2 cost upgrade, it says restricted here, and it's a weapon. So you only have 2 restricted cards in play at once. So if I play the Plasma Pistol and the Scimitar, I cannot play another copy of the Plasma Pistol. And yeah, if you play a Side Holster, then that will increase that limit, so you can play that extra copy. It's 0 cost upgrade, so you just put it down, you have that out. Because of that, it's going to be a situation card, right? It's going to be only useful in situation where you want a lot of those weapon upgrades out. So I see that being useful for Rocket. I can see it being good for the Venom hero. But even if you are playing with a lot of weapon upgrades, I mean, even if you are playing with a lot of restricted cards, it's only for weapon upgrades, right? So if it's restricted cards for non-weapon upgrades, this will not increase that limit for that. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good C tier level card that can be very, very vital if you're playing with a bunch of those weapon upgrades. A little bit hard for me to rank. I think I'm going to put this card, if you're playing with weapon upgrades, yeah, I'm going to value this card kind of as if you are playing with some weapon upgrades. I'm putting it actually in between the Civic Duty and the Adrenaline Rush. I actually think the Adrenaline Rush is better than the Civic Duty. So I think the Side Holster has more situations where it's going to be useful than Civic Duty here. A little bit weird because the Civic Duty is so similar to Adrenaline Rush, but I do value that attack a lot more than the Thwart because it can help you end games for here. And this usually is not going to help you end any games. Okay, next upgrade we have is Sidearm. 1 cost upgrade attached to an ally, max 1 per ally. Attached ally gets +1 attack and its attack scan ranged. So just your basic upgrade for an ally, 1 cost. That's kind of the rate that all ally upgrades go for. So this is only going to be good if you're playing a deck that revolves around allies, and you want to build up those allies, right? So yeah, I mean that's, yeah, Voltron type decks, I mean it's going to go C tier for me. And I'm going to put it here. Okay, so yeah, I like this gap that I have between the Civic Duty and the Adrenaline Rush. Okay, so for a card like Sidearm, right, the reason that I'm putting it here is I think that Voltron style decks are slow to start, and I think that they're very, very difficult to utilize against the most difficult scenarios in the game. So yeah, I mean, they're very, very difficult to use if you want to defeat Venom Goblin or Expert Ronin, right? So because of that, I have to rank cards that revolve around the archetype a little bit lower, because we are trying to rank like how good a card is. And if a card is good for an archetype that's not necessarily that strong, then the card itself, the limit for that card is not going to be as high, right? So for that reason, and I think C tier is a good card for this card, right? It can definitely be a very, very useful card. It can be an A tier level card, right? Because the effect is an A tier level, right? Just giving the ally +1 attack. If the ally, if you're building around where the ally gets a bunch of readies, right? If that ally doesn't take consequential damage, right? It also avoids retaliate now because it gains range from this as well. So it can be good, can be very, very good. But I think that all those things that you need to have all those things to maximize this card's effect. So it's a very situational card, which puts it here in the C tier for me. Next, we have Soaring Acrobatics. 2 cost upgrade, play under any player's control, max 1 per player. Here, interrupt. When an aerial character you control uses a basic power, exhaust this card. That character gets +1 to that power for this use. So we're going to value this card as if we're playing with an aerial character. Yeah, this card is actually really, really good. So when any aerial character uses a basic power, right? So it can be an ally as well. You just exhaust this card and you get +1 to that power. So this stays in play forever. You just have to exhaust every single time. I think this is an A tier level card, and I do like the let's see, I do like Ingenuity more, because this is only for that use, right? This is +1 to the basic power for that use, so not for the whole phase, right? So for example, the Adrenaline Rush right here, you get +1 attack until the end of the phase. If you use this to get +1 attack or +1 defense or +1 thwart, it's only going to be for that activation, right? For that power for this use. So if you ready up and attack again, you won't have that +1 attack from the Soaring Acrobatics, so it's only going to be there. But most of the time, you may only activate once per phase, right? Use your basic activation, I mean. So this card's going to have immense value over the course of the game, and it's very versatile, right? It's whatever one that you're using, right? So similar to like stuff like the combat training and the heroic intuition, right? So this is the intuition. This is the justice. 2 cost upgrade, your hero gets +1 thwart, right? So when you play this card, you only get +1 thwart. But for this card, you could get the +1 thwart whenever you thwart, or if you're attacking, you get +1 attack. If you're defending, you get +1 defense, right? So it's a lot more versatile. So I do like this card more. Obviously, if you get a bunch of readies, it's better to have that +1 thwart, right? Because then the +1 thwart is going to be there forever. So it's a part of your hero's stat now. It's a stat increase. So it counts for all the cards that count your hero's stat. Versus this thing doesn't give your hero that stat bonus like permanently. It's just temporarily for that specific use. So if you're counting your hero stats, if your hero stat line's like 2-2-2, like 2 thwart, 2 attack, 2 defense, and this gives you +1 attack for like 1 attack, your attack goes right back down to 2 right after. So yeah, I mean, for that reason, it's a little bit, you know, there's a little bit of a drawback behind it, but I think it's very, very good, very, very versatile, because you can choose which one you want that +1 to. So if you're playing an aerial character, I mean, I think this card is definitely an A tier card, definitely a card you want to build around. And if you have an empty roster spot, I mean, it is more than welcome, right? So it goes above the B tier. Very, very powerful card. Next, we have a 2 cost upgrade here, the Combat Specialist. So we have all the specialist cards here. Let me pull up Specialized Training. So this is a player's side scheme that came in X23's hero pack here. So Specialized Training is a 1 cost player side scheme, right? So you play 1 cost and you put this side scheme into play, and it has 5 times player threat. Whenever you defeat the side scheme, it goes into individual display, and each player who does not control a specialization upgrade chooses 1 set aside specialization upgrade and puts it into play under their control. So these are going to be those 4 specialization upgrades that you can put under your control, right? So for the combat one, you get +1 attack. For the defense one, you get +1 defense. frontline one, you get +4 hit points, and the Surveillance Specialist, you get +1 thwart. So this is a permanent stat increase, just like what we were talking about with the Heroic Intuition. It's not like the Soaring Acrobatics, where it's only for an activation, right? So you get the permanent +1 thwart forever, unless this card is discarded. Permanent +4 hit points, +1 defense, +1 attack, right? And then there's a hero response for each one of these, except for the Frontline Specialist. It just says response, so you can use an alter ego, I'm guessing. So it says, after your hero performs a basic attack, exhaust a card, draw a card. If your hero performs a basic defense, exhaust a card, draw a card. If your identity takes damage from an enemy attack, exhaust this and draw a card. And then for this one, after you make a basic thwart activation, you can exhaust it and draw a card. So it just kind of depends which effect that you want, but they're all very, very powerful, right? Having this card in play, the only problem is actually getting the card in play, right? Because you might be under too much pressure to play this size game and then throw it out to get the card into play, right? But I mean, I'm going to evaluate this card for just its effect itself, right? Like how good this card is. And the player size is going to kind of come in like, that's going to be the balancing factor, like how easy is it to clear it. If you can clear it very easily, then it's not that, then it's a very, very like good card, right? And if it's very difficult to clear, then you may not include this card in your deck. But these Surveillance Specialist cards right here, they're all going to go in A tier for me. So let me see. Are they as good as these other ones, or better, or worse? A little bit hard to rank. I'm gonna, because of that player size, I'm gonna put these all, let me just throw them all up in A tier, because for sure they are all very, very powerful. Okay, and then we can see the order. So I think there is an order to them, right? I think that the Surveillance Specialist and the Combat Specialist are neck and neck. I think these cards are equal because they're both just giving you the +1 thwart or the +1 attack, and then after you use that activation in that specific thing, you can exhaust this card to draw a card. I think the Defense Specialist is not as good because I think defense is less valuable if you have to defend, but it's nice to be able to draw a card out of it. And if we take a look at, like, you know, Armored Vest, right? So if we look at Heroic Intuition, right? Just like the Justice one, right? You get +1 thwart, and it's 2 costs for this upgrade. If you look at the Combat Training, this is the Aggression one, 2 cost upgrade, you get +1 attack. And then if you look at the Protection one, Armored Vest, you get +1 defense, but this is only 1 cost here. So for that reason, I think Fantasy Flight Games knows that defense is a little bit less valuable in Marvel Champions than the other stats. So I do think the Defense Specialist is a little bit lackluster compared to other two, just because it is the same type of effect, right? Just +1 defense, and then when you perform basic defense, you can draw a card. So with the same effect, and for a defense stat, I'm put it a little behind. And the Frontline Specialist is after you take damage from an attack, exhaust a card and draw a card. So it doesn't matter if you defend, you can only it's only whenever you take damage from attack, right? So I like Surveillance Specialist and Combat Specialist a little bit more, just because they're more proactive, right? You can get that card draw during your own turn. For the Defense Specialist and Frontline Specialist, it's not all the time, right? But most of the time, you can only trigger these effects during the villain's turn, because the villain's usually only attacking you during the villain's during the villain phase. There are specific villains, and there's ways for you to make the villain attack you during your turn. For example, if you play like a card like Taunt, right? This is a hero action, so it's a 1-cost event you can play during your own turn. When you play this, the villain attacks you, right? So that's a situation where you can trigger the Frontline Specialist and Defense Specialist effect to draw a card. But yeah, other than that, yeah, I prefer the card draw during my own turn, so I can play that card immediately and do whatever I want to do with it. But I mean, definitely, these are all A tier level cards, all very, very good. I think I'm just being a little bit, you know, over analytic whenever I'm trying to look at which one is better. For the Frontline Specialist and Defense Specialist, I value the hit points, I think, a little bit more. But this can be very, very good if you're playing a heavy defending deck, right? But I think that is a little more difficult to play because, you know, allies are one of the strongest things in the game. Like the strongest card type and strongest strategy is chump blocking. But at the same time, for this effect right here, you have to take damage from an enemy attack. So I mean, I can go back and forth on these. I'm just gonna put it like here for now. No, I'm gonna put this like here because this is gonna be for sure if you defend. For this one, you have to take attacks to the face, and if you defend and don't take any damage, then it's not gonna trigger, right? I mean, it can be argued. I like the 4 hit points a lot more than the +1 defense, but to draw the card is gonna be where most of the value comes in these 2 cards, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit hard for me to rank, but I think it can be argued either way for these cards. But they definitely all go into A tier. Definitely all very, very strong upgrades. And the thing with these cards right here, right, they all have the cost of 2. If you get an encounter card like Caught Off Guard, ooh, I didn't pull out. I wonder if I can. That's fine. Okay, so there's an encounter card in Marvel Champions called Caught Off Guard, where you have to discard an upgrade or support your control. And if that discards the Surveillance Specialist or any one of these upgrades, or there's another way for it to get discarded through the encounter cards, right? It goes in your regular discard pile. And when you draw it back up after you deck out and shuffle up through your deck and all that stuff, you can just play it for 2 cards because it's now in your cycle, right, of your deck cycle and all that stuff. So that's why it's just a 2-cost upgrade at the end of the day. And for 2 costs to put this card back down, super duper cheap, very, very good cost for these cards here for just being 2 costs. But that's kind of why there's a cost here. And I know a lot of people are a little bit confused, including myself, whenever I first saw this card, like, why is there a cost? The only way to get into play is through the side scheme here that we saw earlier, the specialized training. So why is there a cost here? And that's why there's a cost. It's if it gets discarded, it doesn't get removed from the game. It just goes in your discard pile, where if you get it back up, it's just going to be 2 costs to play. Okay. Next we have the Symbiot Suit, 4-cost upgrade. Max 1 per deck. Your identity gets +1 to each of its basic powers, +1 hand size, and +10 hit points. So super duper crazy buffs to all your stats, to your hit points as well. But there's a hazard icon, which means that every single time you review encounter cards during the sorry, not when you review, when you deal encounter cards during the phase, in the villain's phase where you're dealing encounter cards, you have to deal 1 extra card because of this hazard icon right here. So it's a little bit dangerous. Very, very thematic with the Symbiot Suit. I love this card a lot. But I'm going to have to put this card in the C tier. And I'm going to put it, is it first in the C tier? No, I think these cards have more uses for it. I'm putting it right here in the C tier. So this is a card I like a lot, but it's super situational because of the cost and because of this hazard icon right here, right? So if you're playing against some more difficult scenarios, each encounter card is brutal and every encounter card matters, right? So if you're getting but if you're getting an extra encounter card per turn because of this card, that could be detrimental, and the extra encounter card could cause you to lose, right? So it doesn't matter to get +10 hit points and +1 to all your basic powers, +1 hand size, all that stuff, if these encounter cards cause you to lose the game, right? And at the same time, it's also a 4-cost upgrade, so it's very, very expensive to play. So you're probably spending your entire hand to play this card and not dealing with the pressure of the board, right? So for those reasons, I think it's a situation card I'm putting in the C tier, but its max potential is possibly, you know, an A tier, even an S tier effect, right? I think for Deadpool, the Symbiot Suit easily goes in S tier, right? If you're playing Deadpool, I think Deadpool, it's an auto-include. It's such a powerful card with him. For a lot of heroes, it can be A tier, but I think most of the time, and for most heroes, the Symbiot Suit goes right here in the C tier. And then the reason why it's an S tier card for Deadpool is because of cards like Maximum Effort. So Deadpool always uses his hit points as a resource, right? So Maximum Effort is a 0-cost event. Hero action attack, take any amount of damage up to your remaining hit points, do an equal amount of damage to an enemy. So for Symbiot Suit, you get +10 hit points. So whenever you're taking damage up to your max hit points, you can do 10 more with the with Maximum Effort, right? So if you have, like, let's say 9 hit points as Deadpool, you now have 19. You can now take 19 damage to play this Maximum Effort and do 19 damage to an enemy, right? So because of cards like that, I think that Symbiot Suit is like an auto-include and very, very good with Deadpool. But for other heroes that don't have that power with manipulating their hit points and using it as a resource, it's not going to be as good, but definitely can still be good to get a +1 hand size and +1 to all your basic powers. So that includes your recovery, right, in your alter ego, because this is for your alter ego and for your hero form. And you get +1 hand size to your alter ego and your hero form, right? So if your alter ego has a hand size of 6, and then you end your turn there, you get that +1, so you're going to draw back up to 7 cards, right? So yeah, that's a very nice card. It's a very, very powerful card. It's always good to have out. It's just that this hazard icon could be more hindering than it is beneficial to have these other effects, right? So in that case, because of that, and because it's a little more difficult to get out against some more difficult scenarios, it's not going to be as good. But if you're playing Deadpool against the more difficult scenarios, I mean, you still have to include it just because it's so powerful with him to help you do way more damage. So this is a very good card, but I think that to maximize its full potential, you really have to cater to it and really have to build around, right? If you do not cater and build around to this card, I do not think it's going to be good at all, which is why it goes here in the C tier. Not that it's not good at all, it's just that it might cause me to lose the game, which makes it not good. But yeah, I mean, the effect is always going to be good. It's just that if I lose because of this card, I mean, then it kind of drops. Next, we have target acquired, a 1 cost upgrade here, max 1 per player here. Response after a boost card is turned face up. This card, target acquired, cancel that card's boost ability. So this card can be invaluable depending on the scenario, right? One thing I don't like that much about this card is that it's a hero response, right? So you only trigger this in hero form. You play the upgrade down and just wait until you get a very nasty boost ability, and you can cancel it by discarding the target acquired. So this is a very good card. I think it's almost always useful because every scenario has boost effects or boost abilities other than Rhino. But I mean, that doesn't matter too much. I think this goes in the B tier here. I'm gonna put it last in a B tier because I think that if you have an empty roster spot for your deck, I definitely would not mind putting the target acquired in. It's not a situational card like these other cards. Definitely in the correct situation, it's better, right? If you're facing Venom Goblin or Ronin or like a really nasty boost effect, it's better. But canceling any boost effects is always going to be good because all boost effects are bad, right? Boost effects are for the villain, so they're usually not going to be good for the player. So canceling anything is always going to be useful. It's just that sometimes it's better than others. So, I mean, for specific scenarios, it can be like an A tier level card. And for some scenarios, it can be a C tier level card. So I'll put it here in the B tier. Next, we have Telekinesis. 1 cost upgrade. Play only if your identity has a psionic trait, max 1 per player. And we have Telepathy here. 1 cost upgrade. Play only if your identity has the psionic trait. So we're going to evaluate both these cards as if we're playing with a psionic character. And then they both have a hero action. This one says exhaust Telekinesis and spend 2 mental resources, deal 3 damage to the enemy. This one says thwart, exhaust Telepathy, and then spend 2 mental resources, remove 2 threat from a scheme. So this does have the attack keyword, and this one has a thwart keyword, so it is an attack activation or a thwart activation, so it will not bypass stuff like guard or patrol or retaliate, right? So or stun or confuse, right? Because you have to your hero is actually attacking or thwarting whenever you trigger the effects of these cards. 1 cost upgrade is very cheap to get down, but you gotta spend those 2 mental resources every single turn. I'm not the biggest fan of this card, but I can see value in them for specific situations. So I'm gonna put these cards in the C tier, and I'm gonna put them right here, right behind the enhanced cards. And I think that I like the thwarting one a little bit more than the attacking one for this situation, just because you have to take the retaliate damage and guard for Telekinesis, and then normally if there's a patrol in play on a side scheme, you can get rid of it by using this card to remove threat from that side scheme anyways, which you probably want to get rid of if there is or not a patrol, I mean from a crisis icon. But for the patrol, I mean for the minion, you definitely want to get rid of it anyways too. So yeah, I do like the Telepathy a little bit more, but yeah, these cards I think are not that good if I'm playing a silent character. But if you have a lot of stuff like this, Power of the Mind, so resource cards like this, double the number of resources this card generates when paying for a psionic card. So this is a double resource when you play Telepathy, when you play it down for this one cost right here. But this also counts for paying the effects of a psionic card, right? It says when paying for a psionic card for the cost and for the effects. So the effect here is to exhaust Telepathy, spend 2 mental resources. So the Power of the Mind is 2 mental resources for that. And another card is Power in All of Us. So same exact thing. This is a wild resource, double the number of resources card generates when paying for a basic grade card, right? So if you're paying for Telepathy or Telekinesis, the wild here can be a double wild, which can be a double mental for the effects of these cards, right? So in situations where you have those resources in your hand, it can be good to get a free damage off, right? Or free thwart off, right? So in some situations, this card is better than others, but I think that it's overall a little bit lackluster and a little bit too expensive for this type of effect. Okay, next we have Tenacity. 2 cost upgrade. Hero action. Spend a physical resource and discard this card, and then ready up your hero. Okay, so Tenacity, I think I would have put this card in the D tier. When I first saw this card, I thought it was like an easy, like worst card in game D tier, but only because of Quicksilver and very specific other heroes. I'm gonna put this card in the C tier, and it's gonna be hard for me to evaluate where to put it in the C tier because I think its max potential is like off the charts, but I think it's so rare where you can actually get the full benefits of this card. I'm gonna put it behind the Telepathy cards here, and I put it above Espionage. Okay, so oops, it's gonna go right here. Okay, So the reason why I think this card is so bad is just because it's so expensive, right? Okay, so first off, it's one card in your hand, and the cost is 2. So you're paying 2 costs to play this card down. That's 3 effective resources. Then whenever it's down the field, you can just wait whenever you want to trigger the effect, this hero action here. You can spend a physical resource, so it's 1 more resource, and then you can ready up your hero. So it's going to be 4 resources just to get 1 ready, which is terrible and super duper expensive. But for Quicksilver, he has this card called Friction Resistance. Friction Resistance. And this is a 3 cost upgrade. It's his resource generator. You can exhaust the friction resistance, you generate a physical resource, and after you ready Quicksilver, you can ready up this card. So if you have, the tenacity is not limited to 1 per player, so you can play 3 tenacities on a field at once, right? If you have them out on the field and you trigger this effect, hero action, spend a physical resource, and this card, ready your hero. You trigger this effect, you spend a physical resource right here, exhaust the friction resistance to do that, and then you ready up your hero with the effect of tenacity. Friction resistance will ready it back up because after you ready Quicksilver, you ready up this card. Then you can do it again for the next tenacity and again for the next tenacity. So the friction resistance pays for them for free. And if this is just a 2 cost upgrade, then give you a free ready and you just wait whenever you want, it's so much more valuable, especially for a hero like Quicksilver, because then you can build up all that damage and do 1 crazy big burst turn, right? Huge shoutouts to Steve from Beat the Game, huge shoutouts to Descry Gaming, right? They made awesome Quicksilver videos using tenacity and doing like tons of damage, right? Like 50 plus, you know, I know Steve did like, I think like 200 damage in 1 single turn. Right, just utilizing this card right here, it can make Quicksilver so powerful. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very rare to get the full benefits of this card, and other than heroes that can get that ready, and especially that ready for cheap, right? If they have this resource generator for the physical resource, it's not going to be as good. So because of that, I'm putting a C tier. But I mean, its potential for a hero like Quicksilver, it's like A tier, S tier level effect, because Quicksilver wants those readies. But for other heroes, it's going to be almost useless, like in the D tier. So for that reason, I'm just going to put it here in the C tier. Okay. Next, we have the Sorcerer Supreme. So this is a unique card. So there can only be 1 Sorcerer Supreme in play at once. It's a 2 cost upgrade. Play only if you have the Mystic trait. You get +1 hand size while in hero form. So Sorcerer Supreme is a very, very good card. Is it an S tier card or is it an A tier card? So Sorcerer Supreme for me, so I'm going to evaluate this card as we're playing with a Mystic character. And I do think it is an all-include. I think, yeah, I feel like this has to be an all-include. Yeah, okay, so this card is going to be the first S tier basic card upgrade here, yeah. So if you're playing, we're going to evaluate this card as you're playing with a Mystic character, and if you are, getting +1 hand size in hero form, that is invaluable. Most heroes have 5 card hand size in hero form, so getting 1 more, you can have 6. That extra card for only 2 costs is very, very cheap. The only reason that I was a little bit reluctant to put this in the S tier is because you don't get this +1 hand size in Alter Ego. So when you're flipping down to Alter Ego and drawing back up to your hand size of, let's say, 6 in Alter Ego, right? This card doesn't do anything. For all those turns where you're flipping down, it doesn't do anything. And I play a lot in Alter Ego, so even with the Sorcerer Supreme, I have less reason to flip down now because I'm getting that +1 extra hand size in hero form. But I still want to flip down sometimes to use these Alter Ego actions or to recover. And in that case, the Sorcerer Supreme is kind of just a dead card on the field. But because most of the game you will be spending it in hero form, I think the Sorcerer Supreme is still very, very good and invaluable, and definitely an auto-include if you're playing Mystic. That's my only reserve about this card, right? I wish it was just +1 hand size, period. But then it'll be even better than what it is, and it already is super duper good, right? 2 costs is super duper cheap for it. So yeah, I mean, I like this card a lot. I think this is a very, very powerful card, and I think if you're playing Mystic, definitely an auto-include. Next we have Unshakable. It's a 1 cost upgrade. Play only if your identity has at least 14 printed hit points. So it has to be if you're playing someone like, let's say, Hulk. So this is a Hulk hero where he has 18 printed hit points right here, right? If you're playing a hero that has, like, let's say 11 printed hit points, and you play a card like Endurance, so right here you get +3 hit points. If you do that, it's not your printed hit points, it's your current hit points, right? So, or current max hit points. So Unshakable, you can only play this card if you have 14 printed hit points, and your identity will gain steady. So instead of getting stunned with one stun card or one confused card, you need 2 status cards to be fully stunned or confused. So very, very powerful effect to have for heroes that have 14 printed hit points. So we will evaluate this card as if you're playing with a hero that has 14 printed hit points. And even then, I think it's a little bit situational. So I'm going to put this card... I'll put this card right here. Yeah, I'll put this card right here. So I think that if you're playing a hero that has 14 printed hit points, this card is not a card that I just slot in, so it doesn't go in the B tier. If I have empty rough spot in the deck, I'm not just going to put Unshakable in, right? It depends on the scenario. If I'm facing a villain that's going to stun or confuse me a lot, or if stun and confuse is very, very detrimental on my hero, right? If you're playing a scenario that doesn't stun or confuse you at all, this card doesn't do anything, right? So it's only useful if the villain is constantly stunning you or confusing you. The effect is good if you're constantly getting stunned and confused, right? So if they stun you like, 6 times per game, like a very heavy stun scenario, then this prevented 3 of the stuns, right? Because it's like 2 each time, right? So then it's like invaluable. Then it's like, probably like an A tier, S tier level card. But most situations, I don't think we get stunned or confused that often. And even then, it's going to be situational. So I'm going to put this card here in the C tier. Yeah. Next, we have the Warrior of the Great Web. This is a 1-cost upgrade here. And I love this card a lot. Attached to a character with Spider in its title. So someone like Spider-Man is a perfect recipient of this card. Right, he has Spider in his title right here. And then the attached character gains the Web Warrior trait. As a response, after a Web Warrior ally leaves play, attached character gets +1 attack until the end of the phase. So this is a great way to give Spider characters the Web Warrior trait, right? Because if you look at like, let's see, Spider-Man Miles Morales, right? He came out a lot later than Spider-Man Peter Parker. Spider-Man Miles Morales already has a Web Warrior trait. But a lot of the earlier Web Warrior heroes, like Spider-Man Peter Parker and Spider-Woman, don't have that Web Warrior trait. So this is kind of a way to give those Spider characters the Web Warrior trait so they can play with Web Warrior cards and have more synergy off of it. So it's good, particularly for the Web of Life and Destiny here, right? Web of Life and Destiny, because if your identity has a Web Warrior trait, you can play this card for free. But even if you don't have the Web Warrior trait, you can still play this card. It just costs 3 to play it, right? So very, very good for Web Warriors. Very good if you can get out the War of the Great Web before you play the Web of Life and Destiny. And then, okay, so it's 2 different effects, right? It's giving you the Web Warrior trait, so similar to these honorary cards right here. And then it's also, but it's 1 cost, but you also get +1 attack until the end of the phase. So assuming that we're playing with a character that has Spider in its title, right? It's still a situation card. I'm gonna put this card, I like it more than these other honorary cards. Even though it costs 1 more, right? These are all 0, but this is 1 more. I do like it more. And do I like it more than Ready to Rumble? I don't think so. I'm gonna leave it here for now, and we'll kind of talk it through. Okay, so for the Warrior of the Great Web, I actually really like the entire effects of this card, and I think 1 cost is a good price to pay for it. So not only do you get the Web Warrior trait, which is invaluable, for playing Web Warrior allies and all that stuff. When a Web Warrior ally leaves play, attached character gets +1 attack until the end of phase. So Web Warrior allies revolve around leaving play. All their effects revolve around them leaving play. Even the Web of Life and Destiny, after a Web Warrior ally leaves play, you can draw 1 card, right? So the synergy there is having them recycle and leave play a lot. So this has perfect synergy with the Web Warrior archetype. And giving +1 attack may seem like not that good, but this effect has come in invaluable for me so many times. Getting extra attack is helping me do more damage to defeat minions and just control the board, and even for a big burst turn to defeat the villain. So I actually really like this +1 attack, and I think this +1 attack is very undervalued, I mean. So yeah, I like this card a lot more than the honorary cards. I think it is stronger, even though it's 1 more cost. I think it is definitely worth the price for it. And I mean, this card is good for even natural Web Warriors, right? Like Spider-Man Miles Morales, right? Because this will give Miles the Web Warrior trait in his alter ego form, right? In his alter ego form, he only has a civilian trait, so he doesn't have that Web Warrior trait. So this card is very, very nice, even for characters like him, to gain the Web Warrior trait in both forms. And then, yeah, I mean, the +1 attack to end of phase is very, very good too. Yeah, one thing to know about this card is that if you're playing Penny Parker and you want to play this card on her, oh, I don't know how to pull her up. Yeah, anyways, if you're playing the Penny Parker hero, right, the SPDR hero right here, then she doesn't have Spire in her title, right? She has this SPDR in her title. So for that reason, and I could be wrong, you cannot play, or it could be against what the developers were intending, right? But you cannot play the Warrior of the Great Web and attach it to SPDR because she does not have Spider in her title. She does have the Web Warrior trait. This is an ally. I'm talking about the hero form, but I can't pull it up here. But yeah, for the hero form, I mean, she cannot. She has a Web Warrior trait, but she cannot play the Warrior of the Great Web on her identity, which is a little bit unfortunate for people that do want to play this on her to gain the Web Warrior trait in Alter Ego and to have that extra attack, which is invaluable for SPDR because SPDR can get so many readies so easily. So yeah, I'm not sure if that was intended by the developers, but currently she cannot attach this to herself, and maybe they will change that in the future and like errata this card or something like that. Okay, next we have X-Force Recruit. So 0 cost upgrade here, and then play only if your identity has the X-Force trait. Attached to a friendly character, max 1 per character. Attached character gets +1 hit point and gains the X-Force trait. So this actually just has the exact same effect as the other honorary cards. So I'm gonna put this over here, but I think because the honorary cards have the H right here, they separated from the X-Force Recruit, but definitely the exact same effect just for X-Force instead of X-Men or Guardian or Avengers. So yeah, these are all the same effects here, and they're all in the same tier. Just +1 hit point, and you gain that trait for whoever you attach it to. And then our last basic upgrade is a 1 cost upgrade, the X Gene. Play only if your identity has the mutant trait, max 1 per player. Exhaust X Gene, and then you can generate a WoW resource for an identity-specific event. Okay, so this card, you have to play it when you have the mutant trait. So let's take a look at Wolverine, I guess. So the Wolverine hero, this is his alter ego, Logan here, right? He has a mutant trait in his alter ego, and in his hero form, he has the X-Men trait, and he no longer has that mutant trait. So this applies for, I think, every single X-Men or mutant that's in the game currently. So you have the mutant trait in alter ego, and then in your hero form, you no longer have that trait. So for the X gene here, play only if your identity has the mutant trait. You can only play this card from your hand in your alter ego while you have the mutant trait. Currently, there's no other way to gain the mutant trait in your hero form, so this card you can only play in your alter ego, max 1 per player. And then after you have this card down, you can exhaust it to generate a WoW resource for any identity-specific event forever, right? So you can use this effect, this resource here in hero form or alter ego because it's not a hero resource, not an alter ego resource, right? So that is good, but it's only for an identity-specific event. So if you're playing like Wolverine and you want to play a lunging strike, for example, right? This is a 3 cost identity-specific event. It's an identity-specific event because it has the Wolverine symbol right here and is one of his cards in his hero kit. But if you're playing any other event, right, like let's say Haymaker, right? So this is a 2 cost basic event right here, right? So you cannot generate the WoW resource to play Haymaker because it is not an identity-specific event. So for that reason, I find the X-Gene a little bit restricting. It means that you want to be using this card in a deck where you're playing most of your hero cards all the time and your hero events, right? It can only be for an event as well, so it can't be for an upgrade. So you can't use the X-Gene to play for, let's say, like Berserker Frenzy, another Wolverine card. So this is a Wolverine identity-specific right here because it has his the numbers here for the Wolverine pack and then his little icon right here. It's a 2 cost upgrade, so you cannot use the X-Gene to pay for that because only for an identity-specific event. So for that reason, I actually find this card very restricting. If I'm playing a mutant character, is this a B tier level card? If I have an empty Rosh spot in my deck, I am not including this card. This card is going to go in the C tier for me. Yeah, because even if I have an empty Rosh spot, I really have to have a deck that can utilize this card, right? Not necessarily build around it, but utilize it, right? So I want to have a deck where I have a lot of these identity-specific events that I'm playing constantly throughout the entire game, right? And oftentimes when I'm trying to set up, I'm not necessarily playing a lot of my identity-specific events other than Thor events, you know, in the early game or mid-game. And late game, I'm already set up enough to where I can easily play for anything, and I don't need this specifically as a resource generator. So yeah, for 1 cost, it helps out. It's a very high tempo card, right? Because it's only 1 cost, but its restriction is not that good, and it restricts particularly more in the early game as well. So for that reason, I'm gonna put this card in the C tier. I don't think it's a bad card, and it definitely can be good in a correct situation. I think that it has to be good in a correct situation. So I do like the honorary cards more. I like the Symbiot Suit more as well. Actually, no, I think it's very close to Symbiot Suit. I'm gonna put it in front of the Symbiot Suit. Um, yeah, I think that there's going to be more situations where the exchange is good, even though the ceiling of the Symbiot Suit is much higher, right? I think Symbiot Suit can do a lot more with Deadpool and heroes that really utilize that reading, stuff like that. And X-Gene, at the end of the day, is just a resource generator and a very restrictive one. But resource generators are still great. It's just, you know, going to be a little bit restrictive because of all this stuff. So only for an identity specific event, and you only play this if you have the mutant trait. Yeah, so this card, yeah, I think that's a good spot for it. All right, so there we have it. This is my entire basic upgrade tier list in Marvel Champions, and the only card I have in the S tier here is the Sorcerer Supreme, which I think if you're playing Mystics, this card is an auto-include, and I only have one D tier card here as well. So let me know what you guys think, if you guys agreed or disagreed with anything on this list, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.